Alright, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Chupacabra's lair. I'm your host, Larry. We're back for some more select coverage of E3 2017. I'm your host, and I'm also joined by my pal, Triad Ninja. He's been in some videos in the past, I think, probably. We've known each other long enough that I've probably, like, monkeyed him into doing that at some point. And we're gonna be talking about Destiny, because he's the only person whose opinion, like, I think is, like, actually pretty accurate for, like, what Destiny did in the past and what it's doing in the future that I trust on camera. We're looking at Destiny 2 here today, and we're basically gonna be talking about, like, what happened that made Destiny 1 pretty lackluster and boring, unless you're just kind of like Halo games and need your fix on every console of your choosing, and what they kind of need to do in order to fix that going forward. So what's your take on it, Ben, so far, Triad?
Well, as I've played over like 300 hours or so in the first game, just looking at the trailer, and I watched the gameplay trailer that they had released a few weeks ago that kind of detailed the gameplay, showing off some of the new, like the first mission when the Cabal invade the planet Earth and start taking over the Traveler and killing the tower and the last city and all that. And really, as I'm watching this, I'm like, yeah, I'm going through, and I'm like, you know, my oohs and ahs are all there because I'm seeing like new exotic weapons and maybe kind of a newer refined UI, some new subclasses to test out and try out and play around with that look really cool. But once everything was kind of said and done and they started detailing some of the mechanics or whatever, I couldn't help but feel that with the trailer and with the gameplay and all that I saw, that this isn't really Destiny 2. That they're not really improving on anything from the original game. They're just adding a few things and then, you know, changing up like some subclasses and adding in more weapons and stuff like that. It feels more like Destiny 1.5, or if it like just a really large DLC at this point.
Right, it's like they're just trying to do an expansion, but they want that full $60 for it instead of just $20. And so they're just packaging it with the exact same mechanics with perhaps a little bit more polish on the graphics, and then slapping some more story on top of it. And from what I'm seeing, like, this all looks exactly like what I saw when I first played the game. Like, it looks like a pretty lackluster story is going on here. Oh, the Cabal wants to steal the Traveler's Light. I think consent is usually involved with that, but I don't necessarily know how interdimensional god powers in the future work. But it definitely doesn't fill me with a lot of enthusiasm. Like, it just feels like, you know, what it was in the first place, a Halo clone. Where you run around with, you know, a Halo suit and you got crazy sci-fi powers. And all the enemies have, like, an archetypal basis, like there's the general purpose infantry that run up, like, just garbage for you to kill. There's big, heavy-hitting knights. There's casters, there's, like, tanky dudes, there's some, like, flamethrowery dudes. And then there's, like, a boss dude. And the thing that I don't like most of all about the early footage, like I'm looking at Jack Fragg's footage for this video right now, is that everything in Destiny always eventually came down to becoming a siege mission of some kind. Either you're under siege, or you're sieging something. So you're defending yourself from waves of monsters, or you are the waves of monsters going after a bullet sponge of a boss. All of the original, like, strike missions that you did in the first one, which were the dungeons, where you go and, like, kill your way through a dungeon to the last boss, all of those bosses, to get better gear, were just shoot the shit out of it for 20 minutes and eventually it'll probably die. Or people will leave the group 3-4 times and new people with actually fresh ammo will come in, and eventually the people that stuck it out will eventually get something. Maybe. But that was another problem with the game. Like, I don't know why is everyone so stingy with better gear in these games. Like, I don't need to farm more than I already am. This is already a knuckle grind in a lot of respects for gearing up in these games. Like, do I really need to be punished with only ever seeing green or slightly blues from mission, like, rewards? That was always a huge problem in this game. So I'm just seeing a lot more of the same, and it doesn't fill me with enthusiasm.
Now, to your credit, starting off, I want to kind of go back and readdress the story thing. As they came out with more DLC, they did start addressing the story more. They just didn't do a very good job initially of setting it up by putting it out front. But if you actually go through, and yes, the Grimoire card thing on your phone and whatnot, that was a terrible idea. I don't know why. I don't know what executive thought that was a good idea, but they need a good slap on the face because that was just ridiculous. But they did have a lot of background lore and story there, and it's actually kind of a unique and interesting universe once you actually start getting into it. It's sort of like Dark Souls, where it's not available. It's not really like present on the face of it, but once you start digging into the lore, it's like, oh wow, this is actually really neat. They also fixed your other issue later on in Destiny 1 about only getting like greens and blue drops from bosses and whatnot, where you would start to get, you know, from the higher level strikes, you would definitely start getting legendary drops relatively frequently. And then when from the Nightfalls, you would basically always be guaranteed a legendary drop no matter what, and then a good chance of getting an exotic weapon or armor.
All right, that's nice, because I don't know what the point of being stingy in the game was. You might as well just start throwing color at everybody, like, for real. Now, the things that I do like about Destiny 2, and there are things that I do legitimately like, is Destiny 2 coming to PC, for starters, which is something that they should have done from the very beginning. Oddly, it's going to be on the Blizzard launcher, of all things. Like, I was not anticipating that, but that's probably just Activision saying, we want to be on our own platform, we don't have one, but we own Blizzard, so let's make them do it.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a little weird seeing that, especially because, you know, it's not a Blizzard product, so seeing it on there is going to be a little weird. However, I do think that one of the nice things about the old Destiny is with each DLC and the expansion that they came out with, they have been listening to their community about different things that people wanted. They fixed rewards, they fixed things here and there, and that'll definitely carry over to Destiny 2. But there are other things I want to talk about with Destiny 2 that I'm a little more concerned about whether or not it'll actually live up to the sequel, or that it should be at least.
So so let's start here. What was the end thing that happened right at the end of Destiny 1? Like, what was the last boss, last story thing? Spoiler alert for like the next 5 minutes, people.
Actually, I can't really say to those spoilers because I didn't play the last DLC of the expansion or of Destiny 1, because I just lost interest at that point, and I just was like, all right, fine, none of this is going to matter anyway because none of this is carrying over to Destiny 2. I don't really care to sit there and get another DLC, play through some more, get some more loot, and do all that stuff again. I didn't really see the want or need to do that. But there was the last major expansion before the last DLC, the Taken King. We saw Oryx, who is the leader of the Hive, get completely destroyed and decimated. Like, the Guardians were able to go in, find him in his lair, and just kill him. And we were able to stop him from like rebirthing or anything like that. So now the Hive, I think, are kind of scattered, maybe controlled by some of the other like weird leaders or whatever.
Yeah, and those were like the weird undead guys that like grow insect-like out of like corpses of planets. I kind of liked those guys, and I kind of like the idea of fighting like the Roman Legion kind of thing, but I'm just hoping that they have a better variety of like boss mechanics and things that actually feel like a boss and not just a bigger version of an existing enemy. And then things will get pretty good. And I understand they did some of that, but from the video footage I saw of parts of the Taken King, I don't necessarily know that it did enough of that, but I expect like a certain amount of like story and depth to the games. And the original story of Destiny, that was written by, you know, this thing that I think that Activision and Bungie could pay attention to, it's called writers. They're paid to write for a reason. They were gonna make it so that it turns out that the Traveler was actually the villain, and, like, all the other, like, scavengers were just after you because you were now working for them, and they wanted to stop you and kill the Traveler. Or, I don't remember if it was that or if they were, like, the minions of the Traveler, and they were trying to suck away your technology because you were the super advanced ones during your golden age. And that was actually pretty cool. And I would have loved that thing to come awaken me to shoot it with a giant cannon. But that said, like, I feel at this point the Traveler should be a little bit awake by now. I'm feeling like the Traveler is a little bit of a dumb gimmick. Like, story-wise, it's time for that thing to wake up and start slapping kids.
Yeah, no, the Traveler's definitely like a weird kind of wild card. We still don't know everything about the Traveler, though currently with this story, I mean, it could be where it does turn out to be the bad guy still. But at this point in the story, we are still assuming that they are the good guys and that the ghosts that they sent out are, you know, still helpful to us, which technically we're not even like people. We're actually just corpses that have been reanimated by the ghosts. We're technically all zombies that were running around in armor.
You know what
suits
always really disappointed me is that the character classes are people, robots, and you can also be space goths. And they're not really elves, they're just edgy space goths, and that was the dumbest thing. I need lizard people, or I need, like, aliens with tentacles, but space goths? Oh, we're space elves, ooh.
There was talk of potentially doing the Fallen as a potential playable race. So the Fallen were the guys with, like, the weird spider tanks, and they kind of looked like the Covenant, sort of. They had like the electric sniper rifles and stuff like that, and the weird eyeballs that followed them around. Yeah, those guys were, because in more spoilers here, in the DLC prior to the Taken King, House of Wolves, you actually find some of the Fallen are actually not all necessarily bad. They're just kind of fighting for control and whatnot. And
well, the thing with the Fallen, the story with the Fallen is interesting. They actually used to be hugely technologically advanced before the fall of their civilization, and they created the Observers to convert mass into, like, nutritious energy that they could eat. But when they had the fall of their civilization, the servitors took over, and were like, oh, we're in charge now, you can't eat without us. Because now they're dependent on them for food entirely. So that's kind of like what their shtick is. That's why they worship them to a certain extent and build more. But I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things about the game that I just didn't like, because again, I need a certain amount of depth to my game. I need, like, things going on in the background. I need things to kind of make sense. I need the end boss of the initial original game to not just be an existential floating bag of diarrhea. Which is what it literally was. It was just evil diarrhea doing evil things in a floaty little anti-gravity sphere, and then it sometimes coalesces inside of robots to touch you. I don't know, that just was a huge letdown. It was just a rehash of a boss from earlier in the game, and, like, just 3 of them all at once. That's a cheap thing that we did back when video games were still young, because we didn't have enough space in a cartridge to do anything cool. We kind of know better now, and I guess they've kind of fixed some of that. But again, I would be, if you were really not sold on the same old grind, this is probably not a game you're gonna want to play. I would try the beta, because I guarantee they're gonna do an open beta soon for everyone to play and showcase it, which I will do. You can see more of that here, and I will force Triad to join me as well.
Oh, I'll be joining for the open beta. I want to test it out for myself, but like I said, it looks more like a Destiny 1.5. The things that they've improved, obviously they've added new weapons. They have fixed it so that there's definitely going to be much more lore inside the game that you can access instead of, like, accessing it from outside of the game. There's going to be much more cinematic and engaging experience for the main story and whatnot. It should be longer as well to address some of the issues that Larry here is having. However, the other things that they're adding to quote-unquote make it Destiny 2, such as being able to travel to anywhere else while you're still, like, on, like, in a playable zone. You don't have to go back to orbit to go to another planet or like that. You can just choose where you want to go while you're still on the other planet. I feel like people wanted more of an open world experience, and they're still not really delivering that entirely.
I mean, I don't think they're ever going to get away from those cheaply made tiny zones that just wrap around on themselves. Like, the Cosmodrome is so damn boring. There's no alien guns in the whole, like, when I was playing, I should have been bombarded with alien sci-fi guns. Half the guns should have been floating like the Promethean guns from Halo. I mean, if you're gonna copy Halo, you might as well do it right. Come on now.
Now, to be fair, they did have a few exotic weapons that were alien, quote unquote. Yes, I agree. Not every gun in the game was alien, and they did have plenty of them that were still, like, humanoid looking and whatnot. And I would have liked some more alien guns, but I still did like the Queenbreaker's bow, and especially my favorite exotic, the next mythic blast. They were very alien feeling, and I would like more of those. I agree with you there.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot that could do with improvement in this title. It's gonna be a shooter at its core. It's an Activision Bungie shooter. It's gonna feel like an Activision Bungie shooter.
And to be fair, they do the shooter part of it extremely well. The controls are very tight. The movement is very fluid. Everything about it, like once you've gotten used to the controls and whatnot, you're able to move around. And if you mess up, it's because you yourself messed up. You didn't look where you were going or something like that. The movement, it's very responsive, very nice to handle with. So at least they do have that part down pat, and that's what made one of the reasons that made the raids so fun, is because with the mechanics included, it didn't just feel like shooting into a pool of jello.
One thing I really enjoyed about that was that you could run and gun, and you just had like butt jetpacks from the start. That was a smart move. Like everyone should always have jetpacks to some extent. It just makes sense in the future. So hopefully they do address a number of problems, because all we've seen so far is some very early gameplay of the assault on the tower in the last city on Earth. Again, you'd think we'd have some more cities by now after all the events of the first game, but let's not beat around the bush. I think I've stipulated I don't like the story so far, so there you have it. But I mean, it's more of the same. If you want more of the same, you get more of the same, and hopefully they fix some of those niggles that I have. So yeah, that'll be it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. I've been your host, Larry, joined by Triad Ninja, talking about Destiny, Destiny 2. Destiny 2, of course, coming out. It's coming out this year? When is it coming out?
Yeah, no, it's coming out this year. I think September 8th.
Okay, so no changes are going to happen between now and September. At least no major changes to the game's, like, mechanics or roster. Maybe some balancing after the beta, because you know they're going to do an open beta. They couldn't not lately.
Oh, yeah.
And so we'll play that. And that'll be it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm very curious what people think about Destiny and the other one. It's a mixed bag. Like, it sold really well, but that's because it had a shit ton of marketing. I don't necessarily know that's because of all the reasons that people might claim. So, bye everybody, and have a good one. More E3 on the way.